So I have fancy pillows. And so I can, to begin my practice, I could use pillows like these, bolsters. If you don't have fancy pillows, some things for today's practice that you may want to gather are like a couple of couch cushions. Like the back cushions that go with my couch are removable and they make great bolsters. I've even used, when I've had a couch that only had the bottom cushions that came off, I've used those very successfully. So if before you begin today's yin practice, you want to start by getting like a blanket or two. It's a little chilly at my house today, so I'm going to cover with a blanket for some of my poses just to stay warm and toasty. I've got some blocks. I have a strap. I have some small furry creatures, which are probably not very good yoga props. But in any case, so I've kind of gathered some soft things around me, some throw pillows, and those will come in handy along the way. So I'm going to begin today's yin practice in a child's pose, and I'm going to use this pillow underneath me to make it more comfortable. So I'm going to take my knees out kind of wide. Now you can touch your big toes together, or you can leave a little bit of space there. That's kind of up to you. And then for me, it feels really nice to bring the bolster up underneath the chest. And I'm probably doing funny things to the sound of your video when I do that because I'm snuggling into myself. But hopefully you can kind of figure this out. And if this, again, is maybe rough on your knees, because this pose, even though we call it a resting pose, for people with some knee trouble, and like my knees don't go all the way down. Like I've got compression right here on the back of my knee because of the size of my calf muscles. But I can find more comfort by having a support under me, right? So if I were using couch cushions, I might need two because they're a little squishier. This is quite firm, so this might be enough for me today. And this small furry creature of my life is trying to invite me to wrestle her belly because she wants to play. We'll see if she'll go entertain herself in another direction now. So we're going to take a moment here and just breathe, and hopefully I'm not compressing this microphone too badly. Here, I'll move it over this way. Now I've got my head turned to one side, and that's more comfortable for me, and in a few moments I'm going to, when we get to about halfway, I'm going to turn it the other direction, just so I have both sides of my neck. If you're in a position where you can have your face pointing straight down, and there's not an asymmetry to your neck, you'll be fine. Just staying for a bit. Even though this is yin, and generally we want to relax and mostly let the muscles soften, occasionally in order to make that happen, it's helpful to add a little movement. So I occasionally will sway my hips a little side to side, or I might shift the weight more forward or more back as things change, to allow for that release, right? To allow the muscle all around my knee and in my quads and in my hips and in my back to gently soften into the shape. And again, my little theme for the day, which is this idea of right relationship. I want to be in right relationship to my knees and my body as well as relationship to the outside world. And so if it would be better for me to do this pose just laying on my back, I would do that. So I'm going to take about 30 more seconds with my head turned this direction, and then I'm going to switch it the other way. And it's possible that you are in a place where you've had, this pose is enough. In which case, the next pose that we're going to do is going to be a pose that takes us onto our belly. And so you could join me, or I could join you there, right? You could go there a little early. So I'm going to take my head and turn it the other way. generally I find that as I let myself relax more deeply, this pose gets even better. Hopefully you can still hear me. So use the breath and use, a little movement or a slightly different position of the body to make sure that you can really just sink right in. And we'll stay for about another minute or so. Now, yogis, we're going to take 2 more breaths here. And then we're going to start to move gently. So on that exhale, I'm going to let myself kind of lift up to all fours. I'm going to get the pillow out from underneath me. And if you've got pillows, you might want to do similar. Okay. And then once I've kind of gotten that out of my way, I'm going to bring my knees in. And for just a moment before I lay down on my belly, I'm going to just straighten out my leg, one on either side, and just kind of roll over my toes a few times just to release some of that deep flexion that I had going on in that knee. It feels kind of nice to stretch back through my calf muscles a little bit. Do that same thing on the other side, and you can, I've got my wrists in a position where I'm kind of stretching them out a little bit too, and so you can do that if your wrists are a little tired. I've been taking advantage of the time when I'm not working out in the world to do some online training, but that puts me on my computer for long periods of time, so I may have gone a little overboard because I am now doing a training on Ayurveda. I've got just a little bit more of that to finish up. I'm doing one on anatomy. I'm doing one on yoga philosophy, and I'm doing one on restorative yoga just because I want some new tools and ideas. So that's a lot, but in any case, so my wrists, because I'm on my computer a little bit, and my shoulders and my upper back are all kind of in a position where I feel a little more vulnerable. So This pose is a nice pose to me for my back, because when I'm on the computer, my low back is kind of going the opposite direction of how I am right now in the Sphinx. Now, that being said, you might need to modify it for your anatomy. So the way that I work with the Sphinx is I like my elbow a little bit forward and slightly less than shoulder distance. If my elbows are out on the wider side, it feels like this wants to collapse around my ears. If my elbows are too far back, it feels like my upper back wants to take up all the space of my neck and kind of crowd in against the back of my head. But if I bring my elbows forward and in a notch, then all of that sort of broadens out and holds me. It feels like my shoulders and my collarbones and my upper arm bones work together to hold me with very little tension. Now, the tension might happen here at the hip, right? Because I want to release the pressure from my hip flexors. And to start with, it helps me to pick up the leg, feel my glute fire, reach that leg out, and then relax it. Because I want this glute to relax a little bit. One of the things the glute does is it helps extend my hip, okay? So it's natural for my glute to fire because I'm in a position where my hip is extended. But what I'm trying to do with Yin is actually come to a place where I'm going to let my bones hold me and let my glute muscles relax. Now, I find them sometimes tightening up when I'm not paying attention to them. So it's possible that you will also find your glutes tightening from time to time. So while we're hanging out with this pose, you can just remind yourself to kind of relax through the backs of the legs and the glutes. If this is too intense, you can come down like this and rest your forehead or your chin on your folded arms. Or you can go up into a seal if you want a little bit more of that extension in your back. Again, just noticing, like, when you lift up, does it make your glutes fire to help hold you there? Or can you hold it there with a relatively relaxed gluteus maximus? One of my favorite my favorite muscles. It's just, doesn't gluteus maximus sound like a gladiator? It sounds now entering the arena, gluteus maximus. Oh, it's the best name. In many ways, it operates like a gladiator. So we're going to stay with this guy for about 2 more minutes. So we're just kind of hanging out. Now, if you need to come down or go up higher, you can do that. So you don't have to stay static in the shape. I like to try to remind myself every now and then to really relax through my legs. So I might give a little shimmy. And again, for me, this it feels really odd and maybe even a little awkward, especially in the morning, to do this kind of compression shape in the low back, this extended shape. But oh, when I let it go, it feels really good. So we got 1 minute left. Sometimes it also feels nice just to kind of drop the chin forward and let the back of the neck lengthen. Oh, you can do little side stretches here. Oh, since we're not going to be here all that much longer, you can kind of lean, or you can do little kind of movements in the neck. Oh, that feels pretty good. Kind of sometimes try to remind myself to kind of move like Stevie Wonder. His, like, the way he moves his head and his body when he is filled with music is so elegant and rhythmic and beautiful. And oh, if I could just embody a little bit of that quality in my own neck, I feel like I would be very supple and relaxed there most of the time. So we're going to take a nice big breath. Now, while we're here in this prone position, we're down on our belly, we're going to do a stretch for our shoulder. And I've been doing this a lot because I'm spending a little more time on the computer than I'm used to. So I'm taking my arm out to the side. Here, I'll do it this way first so you guys can really see. Okay, so I've got my arm out to the side, and some of you have done this with me before, so this is not a big surprise. Now, I like my arm a little lower than my shoulder. If it's way down here, I don't really get the stretch in the front of my chest. So I need it to be up a little higher. Some people may even find arm overhead is better. For me, it never is. I also generally prefer my palm up. Occasionally, palm down is better. So you're going to do an experiment. Okay, so you stick your arm out to the side. Then we're going to take the opposite leg up and over like that. Okay, now that's holding me in place. And while that's holding me, I'm going to adjust my arm. And I'm looking for the stretch to be mostly in the front of my arm and chest, and a little bit maybe on the top of the shoulder. But really, I'm trying to find that in my pectoralis area, the chest muscles, and right on the front of my shoulder. So now that I'm here, I'm going to use something as a headrest. So I've got a little throw pillow. I'm going to put that in. Now you can leave your knee bent and your foot resting on the floor, or you can grab hold of that couch cushion or bolster, whatever you got, and you can let that leg kind of rest on that, or you can just stretch it all the way out and kind of let it rest. And you can even stretch the other leg out so that you're more like, you've got like a scissors kind of with your legs. So I like to have that little bit of support for that inner knee. Some people take this arm over the back. I generally just leave it up front. And I'm kind of noticing that I need to bend my elbow a little bit so that I don't have as much discomfort in my shoulder, or my elbow rather. And so I want the stretch in the chest, but I don't want the sensation to feel like my fingers are numb or there's any sort of tingling. So if that's the case, reposition your arm. We're going to stay for a couple minutes. And try to let your body really soften around the face and the jaw. Let yourself get kind of heavy. If you feel like you're trying to protect your shoulder by like holding tension in your body, adjust the arm differently. And it might be that this pose will be good for you for, a little less time than we're going to hold it here. You can come out when you're ready. Nice deep breaths. All right, so we're going to stay for about another 30 seconds or so. Let's do 2 more breaths. Okay, so I'm going to first kind of remove this pillow from between my knees, and then I'm going to bring that leg all the way back around, and as I do that, I'm going to roll off that shoulder, okay? So before I go on to the other side, I like to do a little bit of like, just movement in the shoulder joint, just find myself able to loosen or get a little more fluid flowing into that joint. Whether it's in the joint itself, or it might be that, just increasing the blood flow because I've been holding that in a funky position. Okay, so we're going to do the other side. And if you notice, that your fingers went numb or something along that line, then you're going to do it slightly differently than you did on the other side. So that you can try and experiment, see if you can find a better position. So stick the arm out. And again, maybe to this time, the palm needs to change to the other side, or you need to lower the arm a little bit, or you need a bend in your elbow. So just pause for a moment and find that position. And then you can keep your foot resting, or you can add a little support so that you can extend the leg and let the knees kind of hold each other up. Or you can scissor the leg so the bottom leg comes out forward. And again, this arm could go over your back. I'm again going to kind of rest it here just so it helps kind of hold me steady. I'm not pushing with it, but I'm allowing it to sort of be a pillar of support here. And then we'll stay a couple minutes, trying to let go. And again, if you notice anything that doesn't feel right, change it, because you want to be able to relax. And if your body's not positioned correctly, it won't let you. Sometimes I feel it's like The Princess and the Pea. That story where the girl they're trying to decide if she's a princess. So they put a lentil in her bed. And at first it's comfortable, but later she can feel the lentil and it keeps her awake. Sometimes that's how the props are, or even just like a wrinkle in the fabric of my clothing will start to feel uncomfortable. So just adjust as you need to, and then come back to stillness. If you notice that you're constantly fidgety, that's different. That's your nervous system telling you something. And it could be telling you that it's appropriate for you to get out of here. Or it could be telling you that you are prone to being a little more nervous or fidgety, and take deeper breaths. And see if you can help yourself sort of smooth out that nervous system response. So again, we're going to take about 30 more seconds or so here. Give or take a bit. Just continuing to notice, like, am I carrying tension around my shoulder or my jaw that I can let go for these last couple of breaths? Okay, so we'll take a nice big inhale. Let go with a sigh. And then with that exhale, we'll sort of slowly roll ourselves out of here. So again, I'm going to bring my leg back over as soon as I can get the pillow out of my way. And then I'm rolling right off that shoulder and giving that shoulder a little rinse. So we're going to bring ourselves to a seated position, but you may want to do a little bit of cat shapes. Now, here's the thing. We've been in this shape for a while, so this shape's going to feel really odd. So take it slow. And when you do the first couple of rounds, you might do a little side-to-side shimmy just to kind of help that new shape in the spine. It's not really new, but it's new for the moment. Kind of re-establish itself. Okay, so then you might need one or two more of those. But when you're ready, you'll come to a seated position. Now, we're going to do 3 different shapes, and I'm going to try to show you the shape from a couple of different angles. So the first shape that we're going to do is the deer pose. So the deer pose brings one leg into a little bit of an internal rotation here. And so I've got that thigh pointing straight out to the side and then bent at the knee at 90 degrees. And then I point the other thigh directly forward and bend the knee at 90 degrees. So I'm just going to spin about 90 degrees and see if you can see that. So out to the side and bent, and then up front and bent. Okay. And this establishes an external rotation on this hip and a little bit of an internal rotation on this hip. Now, internal rotation is not a big movement in the hip, and some of us have less or more range of motion in that way. There's a tiny little muscle right here that's responsible for this action, and that's the muscle that I'm trying to relax. Now, that muscle's name is tensor fasciae lata. And tensor fasciae lata muscle, the attachment for it, the insertion for it is the scientific word for that, goes into the IT band. Now, if you have a tight IT band, that is gristly, deep, thick connective tissue. And it's not, because it does not contain a lot of elastin, it is not stretchy. And so you can try to stretch your IT band, but that's not going to solve your problem. The reason that your IT band might be tight is because two important muscles connect into that IT band. The connective tissue for those muscles goes right into it. One of those is this tensor fasciae lata muscle that is the primary internal hip rotator. So when I internally rotate my thigh like this, I am activating that muscle a little bit. Okay. In this case, I'm trying to allow the bone now to hold it there. But the muscle that I'm trying to help release that also goes into my IT band is my glute. And so the glute on the back of this, the glute maximus, the big, delightful, soft place to sit muscle, my favorite name, or one of them anyway, that muscle also connects to my IT band. So as I'm holding this shape, and you can lean forward if that's helpful, or even add a little bit of a twist, but I'm trying to relax my butt cheek so that this relationship of the outer hip, this little muscle and that muscle, are being asked to soften and release in the hope that that will engender a little bit less pressure on my IT band going away from this pose. So not yet, but when I'm done with it. We're going to stay here for just a little over another minute, and then we'll change it to a different shape. And so again, I'm trying to relax all around this hip. I'm trying to relax the glute. I'm trying to relax this little muscle that lives right here. It's like your front, it lives right where your front pocket goes if you have jeans on. Yoga pants don't have front pockets usually, so, you know. But maybe you remember that. All right, so we got a few more breaths here. Now, we're going to take a nice big inhale. And I'm going to come into a swan. Now, I can keep this bend in the leg, more or less, and just fold forward and then straighten it slightly. Okay? So this can be a little bit bent out to the side for the swan. Or I can do it a little more like the pose that you might know as Pigeon Pose, which is very similar. In fact, for some people, pretty close to identical, except that the intention and the way that I approach the pose might be different. And I can straighten that leg out more. Now my pelvis tends to want to fall towards my bent leg hip. So I can, if I choose, use an object like a pillow or a yoga block, whatever you have handy, under this hip, so that when I come into the pose, my pelvis stays more level. Now, why might I want to do that? I might want to do that. Might want to have my pelvis more level because I'm feeling discomfort in the sacrum, or I'm feeling discomfort in my low back. Having the sacrum off center can cause some problems, especially because one of the muscles that I'm stretching here attaches itself to the sacrum, and that muscle lives up underneath the glute. It's the piriformis, so the sacrum and the femur are attached to each other via the external hip rotators including the piriformis muscle. This is getting too scientific probably. But in any case, so because that I'm pulling that muscle super tight on this hip over here, it can pull on my sacrum. And if my sacrum is feeling vulnerable, then sometimes elevating it helps, okay? And then over here, I'm stretching the primary hip flexors. And that can create a feeling of my back wanting to come into a more lordotic or a deeper curve. So I can sit upright, but if that feels like it's way too intense, then the way that I can mitigate that is by going lower, okay? And again, the goal of yin is to hold the shape with the bones and the connective tissue and mostly relax the muscle and then stay soft. If the pose is too intense, it's too spicy feeling, right? Feels a little prickly or tingly, or it has a burning sensation, or it feels like my body wants to lift up like I'm on a bed of nails, then I can feel my nervous system trying to protect me. Those are all reasons that I might want to shift this pose. So I'm going to show you an alternative. So you can stay with this version of the swan, or you can rotate your swan onto your back. And I'm just going to go 180 degrees with my leg. And then I'm going to use some pillows eventually. So if I want both actions, I want this action of lengthening across the hip, in addition to this action up under this glute with my external hip rotators, then I'm going to bring this leg in toward me, and I'm going to use my hands to help, and I'm going to leave this leg extended. Okay, so now it's not going to extend as far because I'm not able to move the lever of my spine because I'm pressing into the floor. But if I'm tight enough here, that's not going to matter. So what I can do with this leg to kind of help myself out is I can create a little pillow army just so I have somewhere to sort of allow that thigh to rest. So I don't have to hold it as much with my hands. And what I want to be mindful of is not torquing the lower lever of the leg so that I'm not torquing my knee. So I have a hand on my thigh bone right at that knee joint, and I'm holding onto my foot. And then allowing this leg to get long and stretch out. And if that's too much pressure, I can put a pillow under that knee. And again, I'm getting all of the same actions, not necessarily to the same degree, but if my body is tight, I've got tight muscles, they tend to hold me in a very contracted position, I'm going to feel this the same way, okay? And you can even take a strap and sort of hold on to this leg, and I use it like this. I put it across the foot and across the knee, and then I can just hold the strap in one hand or in both hands, or it can just give me a tiny bit more extension so I can relax my arms more. Just be mindful of your knee joint. The knee joint is vulnerable here because I'm manipulating the lever of my lower leg, okay? Flexing the foot can be helpful for that purpose. It tends to lock the lower leg bones into place in the knee joint. Okay, and that's actually feeling kind of good. So I'm going to stay with my upside down swan, and you guys can stay with the swan that you've chosen for yourself. And breathe. Because we're going to hold this guy for another 1.5 minutes. I like to every now and then, especially in the poses where we're holding for a while. Yin gives me an opportunity to do this. But I like to try to come back to relaxing my lips, relaxing the jaw, relaxing the face muscles, relaxing the back of the eye. And from time to time, you might even make an ah sound at your vocal cords, because the 4 sets of cranial nerves that are responsible for our parasympathetic or relaxation response also wind up in the face and the throat. So when we relax the facial muscles, when we relax the tone of the mouth and the tone of the eye, we also simultaneously, and we relax the vocal cords, or make a sound with the vocal cords. We simultaneously stimulate and tone our parasympathetic response. So we're strengthening the response of our nervous system to relax, which we could probably use right now. So we got about 3 breaths left here. I'm just noticing where I might be having a little bit of a strain, so that as I come out of the pose on this next exhale, now you might lean into your bent leg hip and then let your back leg come around. I'm going to release the leg I've had close to me, and I'm going to let that guy stretch out. And as I'm moving out of the shape, I may want to do some little windshield wipery things. So you might be seated on the floor right now with both your legs kind of moving back and forth. And then just pause for a moment and feel the hips and notice what you did to yourself. Hopefully that was all great. And it feels really good. And we're just going to pause. And if you want to join me here, just kind of stretch out on your back in Shavasana, because it's pretty great. I'm definitely feeling a difference one hip to the other. One leg feels a little longer than the other. There's kind of a sense that I've released something. I have a pleasant sensation on one side. And then keeping my mouth relaxed and my neck and shoulders relaxed, I'm going to just for a moment just kind of circle my ankles. I might even circle the wrist a little bit too. That's feeling good. And then stretch in. Ooh, you might even take that stretch out longer. Ooh. And then we're going to come back to our seated position, nice and slow. And we'll do the deer on the other side. And hopefully, because I've shown you that from a couple of angles, you're going to be all right. So we'll come up and make that happen. And hopefully I will do so without tangling up things. Okay. Now, I'm going to take the other leg. Hopefully you remember which leg that was. And bring it around the back. And then make some adjustments. And I like to have, either like a little stack of pillows or a little stack of blocks. Just something to kind of rest on. Make myself like a little stand, a little tripod. It's not really a tripod, but you get the idea. Okay, so now I'm allowing this internal rotation and the muscle that helps me there, this little front pocket dude. And I'm also allowing for the release in my glutes. Or at least I'm hoping. Feeling that kind of relationship to this part of my thigh. And some people don't feel anything in this pose. And the good news is that's okay. Positioning the bones in this way still helps produce hyaluronic acid, which helps increase the amount of synovial fluid that's in our synovial joints, right? So the way the joint works is you've got, at least the hip joint, you've got the head of your femur, and you've got a little depression in your hip called the acetabulum. And so the hip, usually it's quite deep. So the head of the femur fits into the acetabulum. On the bottom of the acetabulum and on the surface of the femur, there's cartilage, right? So that helps protect the bone. So it has a little, little like sheath of protection. So it's not bone grinding on bone when they move. Between the cartilaginous layers, there's a layer of synovial membrane. And then there's a joint capsule, which there's a thick rope of connective tissue in the hip that holds these two bones together. Not just the ligaments, but beneath the ligaments, and that's called the labrum. It's, cartilaginous ring that connects those two bones together. And then the ligaments of the hip that hold the bones come into play. So joints have multiple layers of tissue. And so one of the things we're doing with Yin is we're trying to put just enough pressure on the joints, that we encourage that synovial membrane and the connective tissue included there to produce hyaluronic acid, which draws fluid to itself. So there are cells in the connective tissue called fibroblasts that produce hyaluronic acid. When we are young, we have lots of them. And so we're very viscous and fluid. We move very smoothly. As we get older, the connective tissue has less fibroblasts, so there's less hydrating action in the tissue. And this is in all of the layers of fascia and layers of tissue that kind of help hold things together. Some tissues more than others. But in any case, that's kind of what we're up to here. So we got about 30 seconds left with this deer. Trying to let this hip joint be gentle enough that we're just encouraging that hydration, encouraging a little feeling of smoother movement in that hip when we're done. So we're going to take a nice big breath and a big deep sigh. And then I'm going to move slowly to turn myself into a swan. Whether that is the swan face down or the swan face up, both are good. Okay. So I'm going to come around, and I might keep this pillow here because it's comfy. I might lose it. And then I'm going to bring this guy up because this was the one that I liked last time. So I'm going to do the same thing. Yeah, I'm going to lose the pillow. But but sometimes that's nice. So if you like the pillow, keep your pillow. Ugh. Okay, but I am going to keep this guy just so I have a little bit of support. So as I want to, I can kind of drop this leg out farther to the side. I can keep it closer to the midline as well. It's really, again, about making sure that I'm not torquing the angles in vulnerable places like the knee. So if I just want to hold on to the thigh bone, I can do it that way. I can take out this whole lever. It's just helpful sometimes for me to have, like sometimes I'll even hold it this way, just to relax my arms. So that I'm kind of getting it's more like a happy baby here. And then again, like I might want to reach this leg out. You could even elevate your pelvis. You could take the pelvis onto a pillow so that there's a little bit more extension here at the front of this hip. Be mindful, though, that when you add onto one place, you might endanger another place. So be mindful of your low back if you opt for that. And we're going to stay a while here. So whichever version you're in, kind of allowing yourself to relax as deeply as possible. And sometimes I choose one version of a pose, and then the next time I practice, I'll choose a different version. And I think this kind of helps me one, embrace change in my practice. So I'm not kind of getting really attached to any one particular shape or one particular version of a pose. There's this concept in yoga, in addition to ahimsa, which I've talked about at the beginning, which was this concept of not being violent, right? Of being kind and generous with ourselves and with the world at large, so that we're in right relationship with the world. But there's another concept in yoga called aparigraha. And aparigraha is not clinging or holding or hoarding. And that could be objects, which clearly I have problems with. But it can also be ideas or notions or viewpoints, right? We can cling and hoard and hold on to our ideas that we have about the world as or more voraciously than we might accumulate objects around us. I love things, especially rocks and plants, and I like to collect people, and I like to collect animals. There's a lot of things I like to collect. Yoga props, clearly. But we also collect ideas and hold on to them. So we're going to stay here for just another minute and a half or so. A little longer than that, but it's close. And allowing ourselves while we're here to breathe and to kind of let go, maybe of notions and ideas, maybe of just tension that we're holding onto in our body. These concepts that I'm talking about come from a document called the Yoga Sutras. It was written about 2,000 years ago about the practice of yoga. And the particular concepts are a part of a category of things called yamas, which some people interpret as ethical behaviors. And I like that term. I don't dislike it, but I also think of it as things that start to happen as we bring ourselves into right relationship with the world and ourselves. All right, so we're going to take a nice big breath here. And we're going to let go of that leg, or unwind the shape if you're going to lean into your bent leg hip. And then you're going to slowly bring that back leg around. And then you might stay seated, or you might recline on your back, or if you're already there, you could stay. And then give the legs some movement, definitely gentle at first. And then you could get a little more shaky with it if it feels good. And then pause for a moment and feel, because this is how we learn from our practice. Okay, so we do a pose, we do a little movement because that's helpful, helps release tension, helps fluid move around, stuff like that. And then we pause. And in the pause, we're noticing, do I feel good? Or sensations that I would describe as pleasant? Or am I sore or tender? Or do I feel like I've done some damage? Because we want to learn from our practice. If we are attached to a pose that's damaging us, that's not good relationship, right? So I'm going to bring my knees in and give myself a hug. Now, we're going to use a strap, or you can use your hand, or if you've got a towel handy, we're going to do that for this last part of our practice here this morning. So I'm going to keep one leg, I'm going to stretch the other leg out. Because I may want to get a little softer on this side, I'm going to take a pillow and just put that underneath my knee so that this hip and knee stay very relaxed. And then this is the leg that I'm going to work with. So first I'm going to wrap my arms around this leg. Now, if this is ridiculous, there's a lot of reasons why it might be ridiculous. Your arms are short. You've got adipose tissue in your way. You just, whatever, you've got a hip injury. Whatever it might be, there's lots of reasons that this could be true. You can take a strap around your leg and hold on to the strap, okay? So whatever, or you could just hold the leg in the air. It'll work just fine. So we're going to allow the leg however you can relax it. This is relaxing for me, so I hold it that way. And then we're going to spin our foot in some beautiful big circles, and then some little circles, and beautiful big ones, and cute feisty little ones, and just kind of giving I don't know why I've got those adjectives today. That's hilarious. But in any case, go the other direction with the circles. We're just giving our ankle joint some love, and the sole of the foot, and the toes. And then you're going to point and flex your foot. And again, just kind of feeling the relationship of the foot to the calf, to the knee, to the thigh. All right, now we're going to go for the hamstring stretch. So I could hold on to my big toe. And this for me, because I have shorter arms, creates a stretch also in my pec and my chest. So I might want to do it this way because I'm going to get that stretch out. Now I know that I'm going to hold this for a while. A couple minutes with each of these poses. So I'm inclined to want to use my strap instead because I'm going to be able to relax my shoulder a little bit more. Now you do it your way. Now my strap has a buckle, and I like the buckle because I can make a loop. So I'm making a loop while my leg is still positioned up here, so I'm good. I'm still doing the pose. You can stop doing the pose. That's cool. That's your deal. Okay, so what I like about a loop, and you can do this by tying a towel together, or if you've got a dog leash, they make excellent yoga straps. You can put the loop over your foot and hold the loop. But I can put my arm through the loop if I want to relax more that way, or I can make the loop a little tighter. and I could just put my hand through and hold it that way. I find this a much more relaxing way to hold the strap than to hold it with my hand. You can also, using the length of the strap, you can wrap it. Now, the way that I wrap the strap is I go over my wrist, and then I tuck it, and then grab the strap. And that way I could kind of adjust the tension, and it sort of holds itself. It's almost like a knot, but not quite. Okay. You can figure out if that'll work for you. That one's good. So we're going to stay with this guy for about another minute and a half. We've been here for about that long now. We're going to stay for about that long. A few minutes on each pose. A little more, a little less, depending on whether you came in at the same time. And then if I kind of let the weight go into my toes, I feel this more in my calf muscles, which is, I tend to be tighter in my calves and a little looser in my hamstrings. For you, it might be that you really want to just stay with the hamstrings, so you might shimmy that strap closer to your heel so your toes are pointier. And it's just the weight of the arm is kind of helping to create that. All right, we're in our last few breaths here. Now, I have just gathered a second throw pillow because I'm going to use it. I'm going to take a nice big breath. I'm going to let go with a big and then I'm going to take this leg out to the side. Now, because this is quite a lot of sensation for me, I like having that pillow right under my hip. It just gives me a little bit of softness. It helps support my leg a little bit so that these adductor muscles that live right in here that I'm now stretching, stretch in a kind of even and nice way. Now, one of these muscles comes up and goes through the knee joint and attaches to the lower leg bone here. And that one, if you feel any sharpness in the knee joint, that's probably why, because that little dude is potentially a little on the tight side. It's not unusual to have tight inner thighs. So if that's true for you, you can bend at the knee a little bit to take pressure off of that one. The other ones are still going to all be stretching. Bending the knee just takes pressure out of that one muscle, the gracilis muscle. So we're going to allow ourselves to kind of pause. Now, if this hip comes flying up off the floor, that's generally because the abdominal muscles are not stabilizing you. Now, with Yin, you can allow yourself to not be stabilized. Like, you can get really soft. That's part of the practice of Yin. But you can, if you care to, just kick a little bit on, just hug the sides of the waist in a little bit and help stabilize your pelvis. Who doesn't like bonus core work, I always say. And this one might be spicier, so you might choose to bug out of this one earlier. This one might be easier on you. Just depends on your anatomy and how you've used it in the past. Sometimes we like use our bodies like, you know, our favorite pair of jeans. We just wear it until it rips apart at the knees. Sometimes we might use our body a little more carefully. You know, we preserve it a little bit more. So depending on what you're up to. Take a nice deep breath. And again, occasionally, like I might bend the knee and then let it kind of straighten back out. Just to sort of feel the sensation shift from one part of my inner thigh to the other. Away from the thinner, ropey muscle that wants to connect past my knee. And more into the kind of broader, wider muscles of the inner thigh. The inner thigh is really fascinating. Like if you think about where your femur bone is and then where the flesh winds up, you've got like 4 to 6 inches worth of tissue in this inner thigh that we're stretching out right now. That's a lot of muscle, y'all. That's a lot. It's a lot of layers of muscle, which is why it's nice to spend some time with it. But because it attaches like to the pubic bone and it attaches to the femur and it attaches to, the connective tissue of other muscles in the leg. You might feel it in your hamstrings because it's connecting to your hamstrings as well. And so it's just like all of this kind of activity is a very sensitive area of the body, those inner thighs and groins. So being kind to yourself. We've got about 30 more seconds here. And the last 30 seconds are fun for me to kind of begin just kind of checking in with the muscle I'm going to use to bring myself back. So right now I'm stretching this muscle out. I'm going to use the same area of muscle to bring myself back. So I'm going to take a nice big breath. Slightly bent at the knee. I'm going to start lifting with that inner thigh to come back. Okay. And then we're going to go over into a twist so we can stretch this outer hip one more time. Okay, so I'm trying to get this glute medius area right up here. We usually think about our glutes as being down here. That's glute max. This is the glute medius, and this is what I'm trying to kind of engender a little bit of stretching. I'm going to maybe also feel it in my gluteus maximus. That would be nice. I also, because I like to keep my upper back really level on the floor, I can feel it in my chest muscles because the rib cage is twisting. The spine is turning in relationship to the chest. I like that. And again, you can bend the knee for a little less intensity around the knee joint, or even stack some props up underneath your leg. If you bring the bottom leg in so that your two thighs are parallel, and you put a pillow right between the inner thighs, or a yoga block works really great. The thighs can actually rest on top of one another. So you've got a little stack of support right there. You're still going to feel all this lusciousness. Then you can turn your head in either direction as you see fit. Nice deep breaths. We're inside of our last minute here, yogis. All right, yogis, we're going to take a big breath. And again, we're going to fire up these muscles we've just been lengthening to help bring us back, because these are the muscles that do that. So we're going to inhale, exhale, and then fire up that outer hip and bring that leg back. Just so that we are helping to support ourselves as we come out of that shape. Okay, so I'm giving my leg a little jiggle, 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 shake, 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 shake. And then I'm going to pause and just let this leg gently release out. Okay. So again, before we do the other side, we're just going to pause for a moment and feel. Because, that feels nice, y'all. That's a nice soft hip. I'm inclined to do the other side. I don't know how you guys are feeling about life. But hopefully you're in it with me. We're going to do the other side. So you're going to give that leg a hug. Or maybe not such a big hug. And you're going to spin the foot in some circular, delightful shapes. Ooh, that feels good. Some big ones, some little ones, and then go the other direction. Some big ones, some little ones. Oh. Feeling the relationship of the foot, the ankle, and the legs. And then, when you're ready, we're going to straighten out that leg and find the sensation of lengthening through this back part of the leg. Again, using whatever appropriate methodology you've got, whether you've got a prop that's a formal yoga prop or you've got something you're using like a yoga prop. Sometimes it feels nice just to have a little bit of support under that hip on the outside edge, or a little bit of support under that knee right there. And so finding the appropriate amount of support for yourself. And then trying to relax as much as you can the rest of your body. Including an occasional yawn. I'm hoping that I'm far enough away from my credenza over here to my home of plants and lava lamps that I can take my leg out without running into any furniture. So if you're we're not there yet, we got another minute, but if you kind of look around your space and you might need to scoot yourself a little bit or grab a prop, you can do that while we're laying here. Sometimes rotating the leg a little out or a little in also kind of helps provide a little interest in addition to how you adjust the strap on the foot. Like maybe externally rotating a little bit feels nice. And gives you a chance to release some of the muscles that live right here in the front of the hip, as well as your hamstrings. Taking about 30 more seconds or so, maybe a little longer than that, maybe 45. I like the feeling of my femur bone kind of heavying into my hip socket. Sometimes I do that with legs up the wall by putting a big 10-pound sand bag on my feet. If you don't have any sand, but you recently purchased large quantities of staples, like rice, for example, you might find that you have 10 pounds of rice laying around your house. You could put some rice on your feet and then eat it later. Okay, so we're going to take a big breath and we're going out to the side. Okay, so now that adductor area, this inner thigh area, is the area that we're lengthening. Again, being mindful that your knee could be a little sensitive because one of those muscles ropes all the way out through the knee joint to the lower leg bone. And it might be a little sensitive around the groin because they attach to those bones there at the pubis. It's really, they attach between the pubis and what's called the ischial tuberosity. I love bone names. So you probably have heard that bone called the sit bone or the sits bone. Really, its technical name is ischial tuberosity. So between the pubic bone, wrapping around on the underside of the pelvis, is where all of these adductor, these inner thigh muscles connect. And so you could feel it pull at your, like, closer to your tailbone, or you might feel it pull closer to the pubic bone. Because it's in that, kind of general area. And again, they're quite meaty, right? This area is a lot of really deep, delightful layers of muscle. And so the sensation for me is sometimes quite spicy, very interesting. So again, I've got a pillow under my thigh to help with that, to kind of hold my thigh in a position where it's just the right amount of sensation, not too much, not too little. We're going for that Goldilocks favored place, just right. We're trying to be Goldilocks in this particular regard. Regardless of the color of your actual locks. Which mine are becoming more and more silver every day. So, all right, you guys, we have about 45 more seconds here. And again, this last few seconds are where you might start to just add a little tiny bit of movement, just to start to kind of reawaken your relationship to this inner thigh. You could also just pause and stay stable because it feels good to stay still. Sometimes when I'm paying attention to the muscle area of my body, I like to close my eyes. It helps me concentrate. For you, there might be a better trick for your concentration. Okay, so we're going to take a big breath. And again, I'm going to fire up this inner thigh, and I'm going to bring myself back with those inner thigh muscles. Okay, now I'm going across my body. I'm just going to make a couple of little adjustments to my props. Okay, now I'm going to adjust my chest so that I can get this arm to kind of stretch out a little bit. So now I've got this whole area here, which is my abductor muscles, is what these guys are called. And I probably feel it in my external hip rotators up under that glute, and I might feel it in the glute muscles, the glute maximus itself, because of its relationship to my IT band. So this whole kind of outer hip, buttock, thigh, all down this outer side. It might be interesting. And again, we feel things where we feel things. There's no right place or right way or right amount to feel something in a yoga pose. It is what it is. So some people are tighter in this area, or the muscle is more tender and weak. A weak muscle can be tight and tender. It doesn't just mean that it's strong and tight. It can also be strong and tight, right? You can have worked this muscle so that it's so beautifully strong, but also the fibers are quite short and you feel a lot of sensation when you attempt to lengthen. And so again, with yin, we're really, like, the muscle is attached, like everything's coming together, but we're trying to relax as best we can so that we can give the connective tissue layers around that muscle some hydration. And we're also bringing blood flow and, attention and awareness to the parts of our body as well, which are also all beneficial. So we're going to stay for just a little bit longer than another minute. We're almost done here, and then we can just relax. If we're not already relaxed. I like to say that word that way. And take a nice deep breaths. So we're going to take 2 more big breaths. And then we're going to fire up this outer hip, right? Fire up even the abdominal muscles here and bring that leg back nice and slow. And then you can give it a little shimmy or some shakiness. Oh, that feels so good, you guys. Okay, now we're going to do Shavasana. And if you would prefer to do like put your legs over a chair that's nearby or up on the couch, you can do that. I've got a little throw pillow under each of my thighs. That helps my hip flexors relax. And again, if my hip flexor, one of the primary muscles that flexes our hip is it's actually a combination of 2 muscles. There's a big muscle that comes down through the body like this called the psoas, and that muscle is responsible for establishing our lumbar curve. And so if that muscle is tight, we tend to have an exaggerated lumbar curve. Okay, there can be other reasons for that as well. But when you flex at the hip, you relax that muscle, right? And so that muscle can go deeper into the back, especially if you flex by using props and not just engaging that muscle to do the flexion. And so we're going to let that low back relax down toward the floor. It's still going to have a little curve. We could probably still squeak a mouse or two under there, but just a little softer. And then get your shoulder blades into position where it feels like the chest muscles and the arms will relax, and you might have to fiddle with that a little bit. And then I like to kind of stretch out my fingers and toes and then relax the palms and the soles of the feet. And make sure you like the way your neck is positioned. Some people will be more comfortable with a little pillow or a blanket under the head to create a situation where the chin stays more level. And then once you've got all those little adjustments made, take a big breath and exhale out. And again, we're using the parasympathetic nervous system, right? We're intentionally making noise. To help stimulate that response of relaxation. And if you're chilly, you might want to cover up with a blanket and then come back to here. Just allow yourself to continue to relax and soften. Now, yogis, if you want to stay longer, you're home by yourself. I'm not judging. You can stay longer. If, though, you have some things you need to go get done, or you've just joined me for the morning because you had that morning to yourself, and now you've got some work to do, you can start to kind of wiggle your fingers and toes, or maybe you're just hungry. Stretch out. You can stretch through the arms and the legs, kind of getting the side waist, and you can bring your knees into your chest. And, I always like to give my favorite yogi a hug. And the thing is you have to be your own favorite yogi, see, because you're the experiment, right? Yoga is sort of like a little really bad scientific experiment. There's no control group. It's just you. So it's hard to know if this science is going to be accurate. But you know, we're here. We're trying. We're experimenting. We're testing things out. We're creating anecdotal evidence. There's something to be said for that. Okay, yogis. So when you're ready, you'll bring yourself to a seated position. And for my purposes today, I'm going to bring myself to a seated position so that I can say goodbye to you. And so hopefully this practice has helped you sort of rewrite your own ship so that you can live in right relationship to the rest of the world. So namaste, yogis.